Greetings and welcome to week 6 unit 3 on attainment of course outcomes. In the earlier unit we understood how to write course outcomes and tag the course outcomes with several other variables including POs, PSOs, knowledge categories, cognitive levels, and the number of sessions that one uses that. So now what we need to do is in this unit we try to work out one method of computing the attainment of course outcomes and close what we call the quality loop at the course level. And this is where you will have several issues in the sense that there is no unique way of doing things. But whatever method that you choose, it should be justifiable and it must provide some detailed feedback to the instructor. What is it that he needs to do next time to improve things? It cannot be too subjective, nor it can be too detailed and objective. That is where the problem comes when you try to compute something like to what extent something has been attained. This is true of many teaching learning aspects. So let us look at what do we mean by CO attainment and quality loop. A course is defined in terms of course outcomes that we have seen. Okay. And what happens, you cannot say that every course outcome should be attained to 100% level by all the students. That is not possible, because different students have different backgrounds, different abilities, so every student cannot perform at the same level and so on. So you set some kind of a target. You set some target, and the issue is, have we reached the target? To what extent we fell short of that? And what do I do in terms of planning my instructional activities that will enhance the attainment of these outcomes? Okay. So first thing is, the course is described in terms of course outcomes. And we use a kind of an assessment pattern for that. That is, how do we measure if the students are capable of answering some questions or explaining things clearly, then we say that it has attained. But how do I design those questions? How do I design my assessment items? That is a challenge. For example, I can write some assessment items. Am I truly addressing the concerned COs or not, has to be decided. So the assessment pattern determines the assessment instruments. What are assessment instruments? Like we have assignments, class tests, and semester end exams. These are all the assessment instruments. And each assessment instrument will have several assessment items, because items mean different types of questions. Some questions are simple or take less time, so they carry less marks. Some questions take a lot more time to respond, and they can carry more marks. There is a whole lot of pattern that has evolved over a long time. So it will have an assessment instrument will have several assessment items. Okay. And that determines the student CO attainment. Okay. And that means the students have responded. The instructor will look at the response of the students and then give a grade or a mark to each one of them, and you put it all together and convert into a percentage mark or a grade or something like that. And for each student it is done. And then what do? I have a target, as I mentioned, and then I compare to what extent my students have attained the COs, and in what way does it differ from the target that I have set up. Both are possible. Sometimes we exceed the target. That means the students have performed much better than what I wanted, what I expected, and sometimes the students may fall short of that. Both are possible. So what happens is, once I compare the actual attainment with the target, that comparison will need to plan for closing the CO gaps. That means if I fell short of it, what is it that I should do? If I have attained my target, what is it that I should do? Okay, that is the part of what do you call the quality loop. Quality loop means I defined certain levels. If I have achieved or not achieved, what is it that I should do so that overall the quality of learning has improved. And this CO attainment also will decide to what extent I am attaining my program outcomes and program specific outcomes through what we call as course PO PSO matrix. That we will address in the next unit, but we will now focus on mainly to what extent the CO has been attained. Now we give again the course of analog circuits and systems, which are I am not presenting it as a table, but I am presenting all the information, namely the POs that I address and the classroom sessions that I have. These will always act as the starting point for computing the attainment. Okay, I will not read through all the details. Now, first thing that we require to do for any course is to set the target. How do we set the target? I cannot say each individual, if there are 60 students, I am not putting separate targets for each one of them. So the moment when you look at any class, you have to talk something like averages. That means I take the class average attainment of outcome. And now, even though class averages, you have several options. We will present some options and we will explain which is the option that we prefer doing that because it has certain features. But still, if they want, the department can choose somewhat slightly different method of setting the targets. And generally, it is a good idea that an institute, for all branches of engineering, if the college or the institute chooses the same method of setting the targets. If each course, if you do, you get into several other messy issues. Okay. So one example of setting targets, same target is identified for all the COs of a course. So I don't differentiate for every target I will do. But how do I set it up? The target can be the class average marks is greater than 60%. That means all my students, I take their performances, I get their marks, and I don't look at the details in terms of what you call quizzes, internal exams and then semester end exams. I don't differentiate, but I compute whatever is the total mark and then take the average across all the students, and that average should be greater than or equal to 60%. That is one method. The other method is targets still are the same for all COs. They are set up in terms of performance levels of different groups of students. Because I acknowledge all students are not the same, I cannot expect all of them to perform equally, but I will try to group the students into 3 or 4 categories and then say what percentage of students should fall into these categories. Like the number of students who get less than 50 marks should not be more than 10% of the students. Okay, that is a target. Or students getting between 50 and 65 should be at least 40% of the students. And students between 65 and 80 should also be 40%. And if people who get greater than 80% marks should at least be 10% of the students. Whether it is justifiable or not is not a definitive answer, but the only way I am acknowledging all students will not be, however much you expect, they will not be similar, but the percentages of them should fall within these categories. That is one way of setting the target. Then the other one is I combine now. In addition to the second category of percentage marks and percentages of students, I will consider each CO is somewhat different, either in terms of difficulty or complexity. The COs are different. So what do? I take each CO and say there are in this sample course we have 7 COs. CO1 I consider the number of students who get less than 50 marks related to that CO1 should be less than 10% of the students. That is how we interpret them. And these percentages, based on my perception or my experience, I will set these targets. Okay, but it is a fairly complex one. Yes, should we do that? The department or the faculty will have to decide whether you want such a elaborate detail. And even if you get that information, what are you going to do? That also you should be clear. That is one sample. Another sample, we say, we don't say now percentage of students falling under the different categories. I will only take class average, but I will set different targets for different COs. Okay, that's how that is another way of doing it. And this particular one has the advantage that first of all I can differentiate in the difficulty level of different COs, and then there is specific information that is available to me depending on the performance of the students, to what extent they have achieved against this target. Let us say I set some target as 80%. When I actually take the class average marks, it turns out to be 60. There is something wrong with that. That means the students haven't been able to, but I need to do something about instruction related to that particular CO. Or I have put my target very high. But you have to be careful in setting up the targets. You cannot raise, when the students are not able to achieve something, you cannot keep bringing it down the target. In fact, we have seen in some institution, the target is kept so low, is it 40%. That means if they get 40% marks, then they have achieved the course. The course is perfectly, what do you call, all the course outcomes have been attained. You cannot be that kind of set the target so low. It has to be appropriate, but once you set the target, you should not keep bringing it down. You should only, if possible, increase it slowly. Another example, another way of setting target is these are quantized. Whenever you quantize something, you lose. Instead of percentage, now you say level 3. If the class average is greater than 70%, I call it level 3 achievement. And if it is between 50% to 70%, I call it level 2. Now my attainment is only computed in terms of levels, and that to just 3 levels. Okay. So this quantization means I am losing certain detailed information, but still it is one way some of the institutes set targets, and the aim is always to what do you call is to attain level 3. That is the aim of the course. That means I want class averages to be greater than 70. Now for all our subsequent computations presenting how to what extent they have been attained, we will follow this example 4 of setting the targets, where we have set up, as you can see, numbers for, but I still differentiate between different COs. So we set different targets for different COs. Now we start coming into the requirement as per the NBA. Attainment of COs can be measured directly or indirectly. We will presently mention what do we mean by that. Direct attainment of COs can be determined from the performance of students in all relevant assessment instruments. You have this many assignments, this many class tests, this much of end semester exam weightage given to that. Okay, whatever the students have attained marks in each one of them, we'll all put it together and arrive at certain whatever thing that is required. With respect to the example we are taking, we are looking at each CO separately. And indirect attainment of COs, which is optional as per the NBA is concerned, it is not compulsory, but some people would like to do that, can be determined from the course exit survey. Because everything cannot be really measured strictly in terms of something, then you conduct an exit survey. That means at the end of the course, towards the end of the course, not after the final exam is written, you conduct a survey. It has to be done carefully, where you are trying to say whether a certain CO has been adequately presented, instructed, and the students have been able to understand that. That is captured through survey. And if you run the survey instrument and you get some, but it now boils down to what you call all students respond to, let us say, to that survey. I am still taking averages, but it does communicate something, but to what extent it communicates, you will have to see what weightage you want to give for that. The exit survey form should permit receiving feedback from students on all the COs. You cannot write the survey instrument saying that has the CO 7 properly addressed. You cannot put it like that. It has to be in terms of a little more qualitatively trying to say whether all the COs will have to be represented through that. That is the challenge. A computation of indirect attainment of COs is based on the perceptions of students. Hence, the percentage weightage to the indirect attainment can be kept at a low value. It is still some information, but I keep the weightage low, and that is, so let's say 10%. That is what generally people recommend. 90% weightage to the direct attainment and 10% weightage to the indirect attainment. Direct attainment, again, you have so many variations. Direct attainment of COs is determined from the performance of students in continuous internal evaluation CIE and semester examination SEE. This is what every institute has. The proportional weightages of CIE and CEE will be as per the academic regulations in force. Somebody doesn't have a choice. And now today if you see, a few years ago people didn't believe in anything internal assessment. They gave maximum weightage to one single examination conducted at the end of the semester. But things have been changing slowly over a period of time, and some institutes are going towards 40% weightage to CIE, 60 to that, and even now some of the private universities are going for 70% weightage to internals and 30% weightage only to the end semester exam. There are both positive and negative things about these percentages. We will not debate that, but the fact is you can have any of the options like 20-80, 25-75, 30-75, 40-60, 50-50, 70-30. We know some private universities which follow 70-30, and we also know some of the what we call tier 2 colleges follow still 25-75, and some universities they are following 40-60. For example, at the institute where I was working, we have always been using 50-50 for our what do you call distribution between CIE and SEE. Direct attainment of specific COs is determined from the performance of the students to all the assessment items related to that particular CO. Now what happens, how do I find out whether a particular CO is attained or not? I have given some some problems as assignment, and I also might have given some questions related to the same CO in the class test, and also possibly some questions related to that same CO in the end semester exam. So when I want to consider to what extent that CO is addressed, then I have to look at all the three elements and then put them together. Okay. So to that extent, I have to tag my every assessment item with the CO and maybe some cognitive level and so on. Okay. But CO, you have to tag every assessment item with the corresponding CO. We will see presently the example. So we require finally the data that item wise what do you call assessment we require. Each item, not just summary. Let's say internal test has some 15 marks. 15 marks has maybe half a dozen questions. Each question addresses some CO. But I require the details of, with regard to each question, how much a student has performed. If I am taking class averages for each question, how the students have performed, how do I compute the class average with respect to that particular question is what is required. Okay. Continuous internal evaluation is conducted and evaluated by the department itself in both tier 1 and tier 2 institutions. Okay. It is the same for tier 1 and tier 2. Way of conducting, but the class test, sometimes even in tier 2 institution, even class tests are also dictated by the university. I think that practice is slowly going away. So the class tests certainly in tier 1 institution, they are designed by the faculty. and thus tier 1 and tier 2 institutions have access to question wise marks in all assessment instruments in CIE. Because if you conduct within the department or within the institute, I have access to all the marks, question wise. And when the questions are tagged with relevant COs, the department has access to performance of students with respect to each CO now. Hence, computing the direct attainment of COs from CIE is straightforward for both tier 1 and tier 2 institutions. When you have all the data, there is no issue with respect to that. But when it comes to SEE, as it is practiced now, semester examination is conducted and evaluated by the department itself in tier 1 institution. Thus the department, sorry for the error, departments in tier 1 institutions have access to question-wise marks for in ACE also. When questions are tagged with relevant COs, the department has access to performance of students with respect to each CO in SEE also. Hence, computing the direct attainment of COs from SEE is straightforward for tier 1 institution. Whereas, and in SE, semester end examination is conducted and evaluated by the university for tier 2 institutions. Thus, the department in tier 2 institution get only total marks scored in SEE and not question wise marks. But it can be done, but they don't have that. That's a very elaborate process. It comes, the data has to be securely shared with them. As of now, today's practice is in tier 2 institution, university will only share the total marks obtained in SEE and that is communicated to the institute. Okay. Now, departments in tier 2 institutions have no means of computing the direct attainment of individual COs from SEE. But SEE performance cannot be ignored. Obviously, it is a significant percentage. The only possible solution, though not satisfactory, is to treat the average marks of SEE as a common attainment of all COs. I get class marks as let us say class average as 65, let us say. Then I say all COs are attained to the same extent of 65. Yeah, it's not the appropriate correct one, but because of our current way of doing things, that is the only choice that you have. Now let us look at the assessment plan for CIE. What is the assessment plan? First of all, I am making an assumption that I am 40% marks for CIE and 60% for SEE. So these 40 marks are divided into 2 assignments and 2 class tests. Okay. Each assignment carries 5 marks and the 2 class tests take 15 marks each. So you have total 40 marks allocated to CIE. And what happens when you look at these assignments, when I take the first assignment, I am not doing this assignment with regard to CO7 and CO6 because I have to conduct this only after I address that in the classroom. So my assignment 1 is predominantly restricted to COs less than CO1 to CO4. Okay, and the weightage to the marks that I give is my choice. It is not unique. I am only giving a sample. For example, in this particular case, the assignment 1 doesn't have any questions related to CO1. But CO2 is a little more weightage compared to CO3. CO4 is again that. So the 5 marks are distributed between 3 COs. Whereas when you come to assignment 2, you are still addressing a little bit of CO3 and CO4, but focus has shifted to CO5 as well. But when I conduct CO6 and CO7, it is towards the end of the semester, I may not have scope for actually giving an assignment in that. But if you are doing it, yes, by all means, that can also be included. And when it comes to class test, I have 15 marks, but by the time I conducted my class test, I have only done up to CO3. Okay, and for each CO, I am giving 5 marks each as weightage. Whereas when it comes to test 2, I still want the students to address CO3, and then all the other COs are addressed in by the time I conduct the test 2, including the CO7. But as students do not have that much time to prepare their learning or do their learning with regard to CO1, I give slightly less weightage to that. So the 15 marks are distributed like this. As I said, this is only one decision. The instructor is free to do so, but generally a department will decide what is the distribution of marks in various elements of the CIE. That much the department will decide, and in terms of actual creating the assessment instruments, it is a choice of the instructor. Now we compute the average, because I have item wise class average available. For example, in assignment 1, for CO2 the weightage is 2, but class average if I take it is 1.5. And CO3 allocated 1 mark, and then class average is 0.7, like that. And I keep computing for all the CIE instruments. Okay, for example, test 1, out of 5 marks related to CO1, the class average is 3.3. Because this data is readily available from the what do you call, the evaluation marks. Every teacher will maintain their own register electronically or physically, and adjust or records the actual to what extent or what are the marks attained by each student. That I am capturing. Now if you look at, take the CO2. CO2 is addressed by assignment 1 and test 1. Okay. If I add together, you have 5 marks for test 1 and 2 marks for assignment 1. So the class average, if I take out of the 7 marks, I got 5.6, which is equivalent to 80%. Okay, I compute like that. So CIE class average now, as you can see, is 66, 80, 75.5, 67.8. Though I am showing some decimal place. Actually, decimal places are not required because these are all approximate ones. You can round it off. Okay. So as you can see, the performance of students in different CIE instruments is different. But this is only a sample. And with regard to class average of in semester end examination, with with regard to each CO, I may have multiple questions, and I collect the responses of that and put them together, and then I get each CO. This is the performance of average class performance of the students. So these are the percentages that I get. Okay, 63, 61, there is 71, there is 50 also. So you have different ones. Now I put them together. So class average, CIE, I have these percentages, and SEE, there are percentages, and we are giving weightage, 40% weightage to CIE, 60% weightage to SEE. I combine these two by making and get a number like this. Okay. I hope the actual computation part is detailed. And now what I do, I combine it with, though this is optional, you have direct attainment percentages we have computed, and then we have conducted exit survey. From that I come with a number, and these numbers are given as it is, and I combine the 90% weightage to direct attainment and 10% weightage to that. So these percentage attainments are slightly modified from the direct one based on the survey. Okay, this is finally the total attainment of the CO. Now I compare it with the target. I kept the target for each CO like this. Like CO1, the target is 66. Target is 60 and attainment is 66. That means I have performed better than what I was expecting them to perform. That's why we will put a minus sign with that, -6%. And whereas CO2 target is 75 and the class average is only 70, so there is a gap of 5. In CO3 target is 70, the class average is 65. So there is a gap of 5. You compare, let's say CO7, target is 70, but actual value is 55.6, which is 14.4. There is a big gap. Okay. So you have two COs with the negative value, that means you exceeded the target, whereas in all other ones there is a gap. If gap is greater than 0, target not attained, improvements must be planned to increase the attainment next time. Next time the course is offered, okay, this is the feedback we got, and I want to plan in such a way, hopefully next year things will improve. There are plenty of issues, because next time it is offered, it is not the same batch of students. Sometimes even the faculty member would change. So you have all kinds of issues, but how to handle that is a different issue. But it's an approximate one. Some data has been collected, and we need to pay attention to some detail so that next time you have a better attainment. Okay, that is what is required to be done as per the NBA. You have to demonstrate from year to year things are improving. And if gap is less than 0, that it is negative, as it happened in the case of CO1 and CO4, a target attained is exceeded, attainment target may be enhanced next time you offer the course. So next time the target is raised from 60 to, let us say, 65, or maybe even 70. But it has to be carefully considered whether the students will be able to achieve that, and or rather, if I arbitrarily increase it to, let us say, 60 to 80, again we may be falling short. We don't want to again bring down from once having raised to certain level, it is generally good practice not to reduce that. It is a good practice to modify our instruction to ensure that the target is attained. Okay. So effectively what it means, the whole process is that you are continuously putting effort to improve from year to year. Things are becoming better and better. Okay. Now how do we do this? So we have now the target and your attainment gap. It can be negative or positive. If it is negative, increase the target to by certain percentage, from 60 to 70 we increased. And in CO2 the gap is 5%. I look at what exactly is that CO2 and say I take specific concrete action, explain in detail the need for macro modeling and the models of DJTs and FUTs. Maybe the students haven't understood adequately. Now I put a little more effort to explain things better. Present the parameters of presently available commercial devices. But this is maybe my conclusion. Another instructor may take a slightly different decision to improve. That's fine. So these decisions, what to do to improve to reduce the gap in attainment, is completely teacher's prerogative. Okay. But here we presented the samples of something. For each CO, what is it that you should be doing? Now when you come to tier 2 colleges, you have a slightly different thing. And here tier 2 college, at least the sample we are presenting, where you are only doing 25% marks for CIE, 75 is for SEE. But the process remains the same: one assignment, 2 class tests, 5, 10, 10. And we design the questions also as slightly differently as presented here, and we compute it in the same way. Okay, these are the assessment plan. Now the actual marks obtained in these assessment instruments of CIE, and we compute the class average for each CO. For example, CO3 is 5.3 marks out of 7, but these 7 are also partly addressed in test 2, test 1 and assignment. But I am combining all the questions related to CO3 and getting in terms of attainment of CO3. And I combine now with the 25% weightage to CIE and 75% weightage to the SE. Because we don't have CO wise attainment details, we use the same percentage for all the COs. So as you can see the marks, you have for CO2 for example 73, and as far as SE is concerned, it is the same percentage, 63. I combine the two as per that formula and I get the finally direct CO attainment in a tier 2 college, these numbers. Okay. CO1 61.75. A second decimal place really doesn't have any meaning. Just because we can compute up to second decimal place, you can round it off. You can call instead of 61.75 as 62. It doesn't make much difference. And then I combine it with indirect attainment, same 10% weightage we give, and then finally come with CO attainment in a tier 2 college. As you can see, it kind of gets, because I am using the same percentage of SE for all, it kind of comes closer and closer to the same number. And now I compare it with the target, and here also I am getting some negative attainment. Negative value means I am exceeding the target only in one case. The rest of them I have gaps. For example, CO5 I got 17% as the gap. Okay, that means something serious will have to be done when I am instructing CO5. So the same logic will follow. If the target is attained, I enhance the target. If the target is not attained, I have to plan concrete actions to close the gap. So this is finally a plan, and what exactly is being done, the teacher does it and then he actually implements that plan. And hopefully the students will perform better. Now when you talk about action plans need to be specific as possible. That is, don't vaguely say put more effort, I will spend more time on this, okay, I will go slow, that kind of thing. It has to be specific. What topic, what exactly, how much time you wish to spend, or what kind of thing you want to do specifically with respect to each CO should be recorded. And sometimes you may require some additional resources, you have to plan for them. The management will have to make the resources available to you to improve. You have to convince some committee. Hopefully, if it is small amounts of investments at the department level, you will have some freedom to sit together and plan with the HOD what kind of resource should be made available. Okay. Indicate if any changes in the lesson plan are required. For example, we have chosen a particular CO will require 5 lecture hours, and then we feel now because the performance hasn't been good, I increase the number of lecture hours to explain further, but I have to correspondingly reduce something elsewhere. Avoid vague statements like motivate the students, work harder, that kind of thing cannot be done. If possible, have the action plans reviewed by peers. This is where the department as a group will have to work together. After all, for any course, you have 2 or 3 faculty who can potentially teach the same course. So each faculty member can take the inputs from the other faculty, because anyone other than us, when they look at it, they may point out a few things that maybe we have missed. So it is always better to have these action plans reviewed by peers, whether internal or even external. You can call people from other institutes to comment on that. And that way what happens, it has many other side advantages. The whole department faculty are going to be involved and working together. And now because we have done one option as quantization, you can also kind of do this computation with regard to that quantized levels. Class average target should be greater than 70%, and we have exceeded that. So class average I increase it to 75%. So like that I can adjust the targets as well. Now this is where it's a bit dicey, but whatever it is, even though this process is not unique, but something has to be agreed commonly in a department for all courses, and that has to be religiously followed by all the instructors in all their courses. There is no unique way of setting the targets for the attainment of COs. There is no unique way of computing the attainment of COs. There is no unique way of increasing the attainment targets. Should I increase it by 5%, 3%, 10%? It is a subjective judgment, and no unique way of planning for improvements in the attainments of COs. So it is all subjected to the perceptions of the teacher and what is possible, what is not possible. He has to make decisions based on that. So focus is to present evidence-based demonstration that the department is striving to improve the attainment of COs and is achieving better attainments of COs with each succeeding batch of students. That is the goal. You cannot get stamped once and say henceforth my institute is doing quite well, there is no need for any further measurements. Because with the time you keep possibly changing the syllabus, you keep changing the quality of students will keep changing, faculty will also be changing, resources are maybe added, all kinds of things will happen, but you have to continuously demonstrate that I am doing better. How do I demonstrate that I am doing better or my students are learning better? Is this way of computing the attainment of COs again and compare them against the targets and creating plans for constantly reducing the gap. Okay. In the next unit, we will look at how to compute the attainment of POs and PSOs and close the quality loop around POs and PSOs. That is also required. Why did we write POs? We have to attain those POs, and then you have to demonstrate that I attained those POs. So again, we have to find a way of computing that. That we will explore in the next unit. And thank you for your attention.